Hey guys, it's Lena. It's Leanne. Today we just finally decided just to open up about our story and our experience with the time that we went through a cult during 2020 and how we got caught up in that through protesting and the social justice movement. Yeah, just for a long time we haven't had the courage or even the will to want to talk about it, just because it was a lot and we never wanted to recall our experience because there was just a lot of trauma and a lot of confusion with it. But in this season we're just finally just stepping up to the plate and just wanting to share in hopes to bring clarity not only our own lives, but hopefully if anybody out there who has ever gone through a crazy experience like that, to hopefully just give encouragement and just to let you know that you aren't alone. Yeah, so it was definitely one of the wildest experiences I've ever went through, and just looking back on it, it definitely felt like a movie. Like how did we really go through that? And we have a lot of friends that also went through that with us, so they can definitely relate to this story. So hopefully us sharing it will also help the people that went through it with us kind of heal and process what we all went through together. Yeah. So this is definitely something that we were always hesitant to share it because it made us really embarrassed that we even went through that. But the truth got to come out. So like I said earlier, this was back in the summer of 2020 when there was just a lot of social unrest due to not only the pandemic, but also all of the things that were happening with George Floyd and just the Black Lives Matter movement. So during that time, just for us personally, we were just going on our own journey of kind of rediscovery and self-discovery. And it was just a time where we were just kind of really open just to a lot of things. So just during that specific time in our lives, we were just trying to find ways to like actively walk out our faith. And so during that time here in Milwaukee, there was just a lot of like different protests that were taking place with various different groups. And I just so happened to come across specifically this one group across Facebook. They had various activists leading the group, but there was this one specific leader, which I'm going to have to say, which I hate, but for the purposes of this story, I'm going to have to say his name. He went by Frank Nitti. At that time, I wasn't fully aware of the actual work, who was doing actual work here in Milwaukee, which I had to admit on my part, that was my mistake for not doing my due diligence in like vetting the people that I followed. So in my mind, I'm thinking only legit people would even participate in this type of stuff. Like you can't be a fraud and do this type of stuff because it's not a paying job. So you got to have a real heart for it. So it was through Facebook that I started like coming across his live streams, and it was just something specific about him that really drew me to him. And it was like really his ability to communicate and captivate a group, and just his way with words that I guess was the thing that really hooked me in. Just to expand a little bit more about our faith background, we grew up in the Catholic Church, and that was very like ritualistic and traditional, and I did not agree with pretty much anything that I grew up in. So when I finally broke away from the Catholic Church and kind of stepped away from what my family raised me in, we were both seeking just a way of expressing spirituality in a way that actually is relatable and understandable and makes it real. So just putting our faith into action is what led us to kind of branch out and try to live it out, basically, because just with the Catholic Church, I didn't see anyone practice what they preach, so I didn't agree with it. So I was more just very open to spirituality. And so I think during that time, there was a lot of like spiritual movements. Yeah, people were very open to spirituality, and there was like talks about the universe and all of that. And I was obviously open to that. I was opening myself up to like Buddhism and all that. Just trying to figure out like a path that was more in line with what my beliefs are and stuff like that. So that's just to give some backstory. As we were telling this story, at that time, I was always trying to see how I could attend one of the protests. And at the same time of my life, I was really like searching for a community that I could feel like I belonged to. And so the protests really gave me that sense of community. And so that's why I always felt inclined to always go out there just to build relationships with people. So me and my sister would always do our very best to try to go out every night we could after work. And if it was during the day, we would try to make accommodations to go to. So there was just an announcement in the group that this group would be taking a trip to Washington, D.C. for the 57th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. And I already knew in my heart that I really wanted to go to be a part of that historic event. They were planning to take a bus to Washington, D.C. for this trip. And I think in this time, there were conflicts between the leaders of the group, specifically with Frank. And at the time, there was like a lot of people raising up the issues that they had with this activist and just raising up the red flags and calling him out for not actually being a legit leader. But me being as naive as I was and being so drawn to the way that he spoke and how he held himself, I couldn't find myself to believe the truth. Yeah. And also him just involving faith in the way that he spoke obviously would draw me to that. So when you put like activism or social justice with faith, I'm always all about that. So if someone starts talking about that, I'm gonna be drawn to them, even though I should be like watching their actions and seeing if they actually live out what they say. So that was a big red flag and a mistake. Yeah. So I guess the conflict between the group, he split off from the group. Well, we're gonna have to have special guests for this video because they keep crying. So yeah, at this time, Frank decided to make an announcement on Facebook Live that he also would be going to DC, but the twist was that he said that he would be marching all the way from Milwaukee to DC. So I know that probably like that sounds crazy. Like who would ever follow a man that's gonna march across the country? But you know, my crazy self was all in for it because, like I said, if you were like aware at the time, or if you kind of were following the stuff that was happening here in Milwaukee, you would see like what a draw, how his like strong ability to draw people in, it was not like normal. And so it wasn't even just us that were like really captivated by him, but he was able to get like a lot of people to follow him and his voice. So he made that announcement, and during that time I was really like wrestling with just the season I was in, not being satisfied with my job at the time, which was just like a normal service industry job, and just wanting to be a full-on like advocate for social justice. So I just been praying through that. I just felt that I needed to take that step of faith, just to go all in and trust that God would provide for me during the time, and that something would come along the way as we take the step of faith. Like a path and our door would be open as we just walked out. It was after we quit our jobs that he made an announcement that he'd be taking this trip, and because I didn't have anything really holding me back, and we both also had like a really good amount of savings that just would keep us stable during that time, I was like, well, to be honest, when she told me that she wanted to leave our job and stuff, I'm like, I was super hesitant. Usually she's like more the risk taker and I usually learn a lot from her and how she's very bold with her actions. So when she was telling me that, I was very hesitant because we also just got our first apartment, and I was like, how in the world are we supposed to make ends meet and all that? But that was part of the journey. So I made up in my mind that this must be the Lord's will for me. So after talking to her for a little while about it, we both agreed that we would take this trip. And so we originally were supposed to leave for this trip on August 3rd, 2020. The plan was to like literally walk all the way there, but the RV would just to be so that we can have somewhere to rest at night and shower and all that type of stuff. That didn't happen because come August 3rd, the night of August 3rd, when we were supposed to take off from Sherman Park, we get to the park, there's no RV, and this man expected us and whoever else was in the group to find the RV. I'm like, dog. Long story short, there were a lot of red flags that, I just ignored because I was just really about I was really sold out for the cause. So, yeah. So we didn't actually leave till August 4th, the next day. So that night, August 3rd, we just ended up, the group who was going, there was like about 30 people from Milwaukee. Yeah. The 30 people that showed up that night, we ended up just going to a hotel to stay the night, and that we were supposed to drive to a location in Oak Creek to actually march from there. Me and my sister did not stay at the hotel because we weren't comfortable. So we ended up staying with a friend, and then the next morning we Ubered to the hotel. Yeah, so our first stop when we started the journey on August 4th was we drove to Oak Creek as our starting point, and that's where we met up with a few other people from Milwaukee who was going to join us, and we drove maybe an hour or two to a location, and when we stopped, we got out of the car and we all gathered like in the grass, and it was really weird because it was just a man on the grass, but he had a harp and he was just playing it in the middle of the grass, and we just all went up to him, and Frank just started talking to him, and he found out that the man had a tattoo on his hand, and it's on the palm of his hand. Oh yeah, on the palm of his hand, and I think it was a star with a circle around it, and it was the same symbol that he also had on his necklace. Me being like really young in my faith walk at that time, like being a baby Christian, I was just such in a state of just really being in love with God, where I was like, everything, I just was like, oh, this is God, this is God, this is God. And so seeing that man with a harp and then the same symbol as Frank's necklace, I was like, oh, this is confirmation. Like this means this is God, like God ordained type of stuff. And so we began to march. I think it was in Caledonia, Wisconsin. So we began marching from there and with the group, and there was just like a lot of energy, like positive energy in the beginning. We just were marching, and the first few days we were like marching at like a manageable pace, not too quick or anything. So things were like decent at the time. We were just out here literally marching, and there were some people that did bring their cars just so that we could put our luggage in, and like for kids who couldn't like walk that long. His goal for each day was to march 30 miles a day so that we would make it to DC by August 28th for the ceremony. And we were literally doing something that professional athletes need to prepare for. None of us were prepared. We didn't have any type of supply to help us be prepared, and we definitely had the wrong shoes, so our feet were really messed up in the beginning when we didn't have the right shoes. So yeah. For me and my sister, how we even stayed really long in this group was because me and my sister, we weren't like really close and personal with the leader. We were more towards the back, and at the time just to rewind back a little bit, Frank originally had a couple other assistants that helped him with whatever he needed help with. But they ended up not being able to make it on this journey, so they ended up asking us to be the quote-unquote assistants for this trip. And so throughout the trip, both me and my sister were the ones who were really organizing the trip with getting the hotels and the food and just making sure that the group was taken care of, while Frank focused on the march. So we stepped up to the plate, not realizing how much work that it actually took. As each time we marched, there were more and more people that joined. So each night we would have to get more and more rooms because we didn't have an RV. So we really had to work on the spot.
And we are literally marching through cornfields and no service, no nothing.
No signal.
So we would have to be trying to use our phone to find a destination to stay. And it was really frustrating because every time we would ask, okay, where's our destination for this day? The leaders would never know. They'd just be like, just find somewhere. But yeah, just imagine yourself just walking through the cornfields, no service, and having to figure out where to place 50 plus people each night to stay and be safe. And we're walking through the countryside, we don't know what territory we're going through and what danger we run into.
We were just really consumed by that all the other BS that was taking place in the group was just kind of going over our head. We were just so focused on making sure the group was straight that we didn't realize what we were in until after the fact.
Yeah.
But the march was definitely a very eye-opening experience where there was legit white supremacists following us everywhere we went, always meeting us right where we went. And so that was just really, there's just no words to explain the type of hatred that our group encountered just simply for marching for a cause that we truly believed in. And it wasn't anything violent. It wasn't anything that should have offended anybody, but it really did. There was just a lot of moments where we encountered really nasty, ignorant people that just really never had any exposure to anybody outside of themselves. They were just straight white in rural areas that never had any real exposure to any people of color other than what the media portrays. So
just every day we would, like we said, have to focus on finding the destination to stay at, and also find food and resources for the group. So we would always be glued to our phone, just on Facebook, just reaching out to anybody in the local area if they could send any donations for food, for shoes, for water. And so we would try to locate those people, and they would meet us on the road to pick up those supplies. So it was really amazing that there were a good amount of people that showed up. So
she was really good at finding those people that would be willing to pull up and bring us loads of food. And
so thank you to everybody that did help us, because we would be starving and just pretty much not surviving on the trip. So
just speaking about food, those were the moments when we did get a little bit closer to him as a leader, and that's when we kind of were just thrown off by it. For example, there was one night when a person brought us tons of pans of hot food, and everybody was super excited because it was fish and really real food, not pizza and stuff like that. It was late at night when we stopped at the end of our march. Everybody was gathering around waiting for a plate of food, and Frank literally took this whole pan of fish and said it was his. Let's remember that we are a group mainly of all women, barely any men, and children. And he done hoarded this whole thing of fish.
But, the whole pan was his.
And he would do the same with the water too. We would have water, and his water would be the big jugs of water. He wouldn't let nobody touch his water. The group would get these tiny little bottles of water, and we would just be suffering, and I'm just really? You can't be serious.
And if the trip doesn't sound crazy enough to you, on our way to DC, we passed through Gary, Indiana, and when we passed through there was 3 other women that joined us, and they were all in a relationship with each other, so they practiced polygamy. And that was something new to me. I never really knew anyone personally that practiced that, so we met 3 women who were in a relationship with each other, but I think they also practiced open relationship with anyone else who wanted to join them. And they were really welcoming and very loving people, so I was very drawn to them, and I really enjoyed how they embraced me and a lot of the people in the group, and everyone pretty much in the group really loved them. But it was just interesting as we got to know them. They were considered our spiritual guides or leaders in the group too, because they were very spiritual. And like I said in the beginning, both of us were very open to any type of spirituality. So once they brought that out, I was like, wow.
And they did happen to pray to Jesus. So I was like, oh, even better.
But I never opened the Bible at all, even though I declared myself as a non-denominational Christian. Never read the word, didn't know anything in the word. So they also said they were believers. But also with that, they had potions. I'm gonna just call them potions because I don't know how else to explain it. But they had ointments and stuff. And whenever someone got sore or got injured or got really hurt, they would literally rub it on the person, and immediately the pain would go away. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. How did you do that?
They would put these ointments on my leg, and I'd literally feel the pain go away, but it was there would be movement down my leg. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. So just when we met these women, I just saw immediately that they were immediately drawn to Frank. They were just really on him.
And obviously, being a leader, obviously all of us are following him, but the way that they were pretty much worshiping him. That's the best I can explain. Yeah, I guess they were just really exalting him and just giving him all this praise.
The trip was a very real trip, where we legit did walk that far, and there obviously were moments where we drove certain parts. The real racism that we did experience, those things were real. But what we're talking about in the purposes of this video is stuff that needs to be brought into the light. Now we're just really gonna just highlight the red flags. So just during the trip, we would always see him kind of arguing with people, or not even arguing, but really shaming people in a way that was just really inhumane.
Yeah. So instead of just talking to that person one-on-one, what he would do is he would call everybody together. He'd say everybody's getting in a circle. And then he would call the person he was upset with into the middle, and it would just be a bashing session. And that just really threw me off. I'm like it would go on for a long time too. And then I would just walk away from the circle. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I don't understand what this is.
It would just be such a weird dynamic where literally whatever he says goes. People can know he's really doing somebody bogus, but he has this stronghold on a person's mind where even though people know he was wrong, they just agree with him. And we would just waste so much time doing this type of stuff that we wouldn't start marching till really late.
He would blame us for why we start so late, but he would always be the person that we're waiting on.
Yeah. And literally the whole group we'd be in the hotel, and we always made a plan that we would wake up really early, 6, 7 in the morning, to get out of the hotel and start marching. The whole group would be outside the hotel at 6, 7, like he asked us to. We would be waiting there till 3, 4, 5 o'clock every day for him. And then he would always claim he went out early in the morning to march by himself, make up the miles that the group fell behind on.
Every day was just a struggle, and it would be so stressful. And there was multiple occasions where both me and Leanne would want to get a train and just go home.
How we're even explaining it now doesn't even fully capture how
terrible it was.
The one night that we decided to march very, very late was in Bedford, Pennsylvania. And I think by now a lot of people, if you did follow the march or if you seen in the news, that was the same night that the shooting happened. This day, I really thought we weren't gonna march. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, it was at that time, it was 10 something at night. So we go to the location that we were supposed to march from, and it was up in a really dark road that like went up a hill. And so we were just all getting ready to march, and this was the exact same day that the
Jacob Blake incident.
the Jacob Blake incident happened here in Kenosha. And so him and another activist, they were just both talking, trying to figure out if they were going to take a flight back to Wisconsin to try to address the issue.
What really irritated me, just getting to actually know the person that I was following over time, was that he basically thinks that he can save anything and just get involved, and he's just the savior, and he knows it all. He just jumps in there and tells people what to do, and this is how you solve the issue. And it was just really, really appalling, because you're gonna leave a group of 50 people just to go to Kenosha where nobody knows you.
So we were just all like, the group was just all the cars were just lined up along this hill, and he was just there stretching on his live. And so me and Lena were at the very front of the group, and all of a sudden we hear I heard a voice that said, "Get out of here." I said, what is this? And then it's like my back was turned against it at that time, and I turn around to look towards the hill, and there's this white man walking down the hill with a rifle pointing right at us. And he said again, "Get out of here." And when it finally registered that he was shooting, both me and Lena started running to take cover behind the car.
I thought it was over for him. Like, yeah, we're all just gonna die right here.
So yeah, that's when Sino got shot, and it was just a hot mess that night where everybody was just really traumatized. That night we didn't get a hotel or anything. We were just the entire group was just out in the parking lot of the hospital that we took Sino to. We were all just laid out there in the parking lot. We didn't sleep all night because it was just, how can you sleep after something like that? So we were just all out there waiting to see what was going on with Sino. And I remember just sitting, me and my sister were sitting near Frank, and he was just holding his stomach, saying how he felt pain where Sino had got shot, basically trying to say that the gunshots were supposed to come for him, but somehow they bounced off his phone and hit Sino, but he had been like feeling that pain prior to us marching, so pretty much he was trying to say like he knew something was gonna happen. I point out that example I'm not here to just constantly talk about him, but I'm just highlighting how much of a narcissist this man really was, that a lot of us were so blind to, that we blindly followed somebody that was leading us to our own destruction.
Like, he hurt a lot of people. The purpose of this video is not to target one person, but honestly, it's the truth, and just us sharing our experience I believe will bring a lot of healing to people who went through this, and also just give more perspective on the bigger lesson that we got from it.
The leader that we were following was not the person that was compassionate or empathetic like he made out to be online, but we all just pushed through it to the end until the very night that we actually marched into DC. That was like one of the hardest nights ever. Like, we all again didn't start till very late that night, and we marched 82 miles. When I say we legit marched all night, like nonstop,
to the morning.
I literally found myself sleepwalking the whole time, and my legs were and we finally got to DC like 7-8 that morning.
So when we got there, we went straight to the ceremony. No sleep, nothing. Just straight through the night. Got there, went to the 57th anniversary speech celebration, and we were just outside. And that was the hottest day it could have ever been. Like, just out there, just dying, just on the floor, not registering anything. We got there.
We did all that just for me to get there and not even be able to process any of the speakers or any of the real historic things because we were so dead exhausted.
And then the crazy thing was, like, I wasn't registering anything, but somehow, apparently, another person who marched with us, Tori Lowe, was supposed to speak on the stage, but he decided to give his platform to Frank. So Frank was able to make a speech nationally to everybody. And that's just mind-blowing because you gotta have a lot of power, like, to not have any track record and then get up on the national monument and give a speech. It can't just be me. Like, I was a fool. Like, I admit that I was a fool, but he had a hook on a lot. Thousands of people.
It wasn't just us. It was something on that man that really, like, hypnotized people where nobody could break it. The main thing that we want to highlight is, now that we kind of broke down a general overview of this whole trip, we really want to dissect, like, what the revelation that we've gotten, like, years removed from this experience. It was literally right after this experience that God convicted us to open up the Word, because there was no peace right after that trip. I thought I was gonna go insane because I was like,
why did I go through all this? Like, this doesn't make any sense, and like, why, like, it had no purpose to it, and I would be just constantly seeking to the reason why.
And I was, like, literally numb for months, like, just not right in the head, because there was just so much that we went through that there was no one we could process with. And even, I feel like, I think some people went and got therapy, but an experience like this, like, nobody could ever understand an experience like this unless you went through it. And the horrible thing about it all was, by the end of the trip, this whole group was broken up.
Yeah.
So the community that we thought we built through this journey, it was all broken up because of one person who really messed everybody up, who now we got a whole group of people who traumatized, don't trust each other, and don't want anything to do with one another.
So yeah, God convicted me to open the Word, and before I opened the Word, there was, like, quite a few people that kept referencing the group as a cult. I'm like, I've heard that word before, but I didn't really understand what a cult was. So when I looked it up, it says a system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. A misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. So when I found that definition, I'm like, oh shoot. So yeah, we figured out, oh wow, we went through a cult. And God told us to open the Word. So when we started reading the Word, we came across a chapter in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. So this chapter was titled Events Prior to the Lord's Second Coming. And there are two verses that stuck out to me. So 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. He will exalt himself and defy everything that people call God and every object of worship. He will even sit in the temple of God, claiming that he himself is God. And the reason that stuck out was because, when we were on our search for spirituality, what aligns with our beliefs, and we were at the same time following Frank, he had an interview in a church, and, like, when we watched it back, nothing he said made sense. When we first watched it, we were just, like, blind, and everything he said kind of went over our head. We were just pretty much in awe that he was an activist in a church.
In that situation, like, though he didn't explicitly say that he didn't explicitly claim to be God, but there were a lot of things that he did that implied that he was trying to imply that he was Messiah type stuff. Other people would be the ones associating him, like, to be like Jesus or whatever. How I know that for sure we were in a cult was this one specific day we were marching through a cornfield. The sun was getting ready to set. We were walking through, and he was marching right next to the three women who were driving in their car, and he was on his live, and I was right behind him. I think we both were. And he was just live, and he was just holding up his phone to himself, telling the women, look, look at that light behind my head. Like basically trying to say like it's like a halo effect around his head. These three women were just so like just in awe to see the light behind his head.
They said that he's the living, walking word.
And that he said he's really sent from God. Like he's like basically the Messiah. And at the time I didn't register, but looking back, I'm like, wow.
And what was really wild was, so while he was holding his phone up to himself with the light behind him, the three women were trying to take a picture of his live, of how the light was behind him.
So let's say this is his live phone. They took their phone to take a picture of him on his live so that they could have that picture.
And right when they did that, their screen went completely black, and then there was like this figure, it was like greenish, and it was like a picture of like 3 heads.
I think it was more than that, like just multiple heads. The picture they took of him on his live just converted into a completely different thing.
And what they said was, look at this is the ancestors in him. And at that time, like I said, I was open to anything. And, you know, obviously in my own background, there's ancestor worship. So I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. But as I've been maturing in my Christian walk, we don't necessarily believe in ancestors.
Over time, I've been reflecting on this journey. And when I think back to this image of the multiple heads, the thing that really dropped on me was when I've been just going through the word. And I'm just like trying to figure out what these multiple heads were. How the Spirit gave it to me was, this man has legions.
And for people who don't know what legions are, it's basically like a group of demons that live in you. So in the moment, I was in awe. After the facts, I'm very disturbed. Because that's what it was. I mean, that's the only way you can explain a person who can do all that and have all that power.
And the thing was, these women literally were worshiping him because the day we were supposed to march into DC, he was in his hotel and he had called both me and my sister into the room for some reason. I still don't understand what he called us into the room for. We were in there, he made us sit there and watch him argue with a woman and be very, very toxic to her. And while he was doing that, the 3 women had a bucket of water and they were washing his feet.
Oh, Lord. So, just another scripture that popped out to me when I started reading the word is also in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 10. It says, this man will come to do the work of Satan with counterfeit power and signs and miracles. He will use every kind of evil deception to fool those on their way to destruction, because they refuse to love and accept the truth that would save them. So God will cause them to be greatly deceived, and they will believe these lies. Yeah, so we went through a journey that was very confusing, and like there was a lot of weird things that happened that literally were like power, signs, miracles. But it says this man, and this man they're referencing is like an antichrist. This man will come to do the work of Satan with counterfeit power, signs, and miracles. He will use every kind of evil deception to fool those on their way to destruction. And we were very deceived. Like everybody,
not even just the people on the trip. He had people from Australia wanting to interview him. And they don't know this man. Like, he had the whole world. Like, I don't know how far this story has reached, but I do know, like, as his assistants, we were the ones like scheduling a whole lot of interviews with BBC Australia, all type of stuff. People from all over the country were wanting to talk to him. And looking back at it, I'm like, that's really wild that somebody that is this much of a fraud could really deceive this many people.
And just to reiterate, this is not us attacking a person. This is attacking a spirit.
Yeah.
Because only a spirit that lives in a person can do any of this and have all that power and deceive that many people. This is how I even came to grow deeper in my own faith walk and really become mature, because I went through this and I now understand that spirits are real. Yeah. And it's not a joke.
There was a whole lot of stuff that happened after we left that's just gonna have to be a whole different story. either in a book or just in another video to talk about. And one other thing I just want to emphasize is that we're not necessarily saying that he is the Antichrist. Like Frank, it was clearly a foolish thing to follow him. Like he did have the power to deceive, and he did have a strong ability to pull people by his voice. The ultimate Antichrist will be even more crafty, because there were things that people could clearly point that was off about him. But we're just sharing this story to like give warning and give revelation for things to be aware of as we just approach a time when there will be an Antichrist that rises up. Because even as we've been trying to dissect and understand our own story, just a while back we had talked to our previous pastors about specifically the Antichrist and how that kind of will come about. And I kid you not, they literally said that there will be a person, like a political figure that will rise up and really rise up for a good cause that like is able to gather people from like all different walks of life and really unify people, and it will look really good, but then use deception, and it's just a lot of chaos that takes place after that. This is literally signs leading up to preparing us for that ultimate Antichrist. So
moral of the story is obviously understand the person's vision before you walk with them or do anything with the person. So that was a hard lesson for me. And just always guard your heart. Don't allow anybody to manipulate like your genuine care for community. Don't ever let anybody manipulate your genuine heart to be committed to any type of cause, because that'll really steer you all the way across the country. So that was our wilderness story. I really hated it when I went through it, but it was all for a purpose, and I really grew from it. And it just makes me more firm in my own walk. Like, even though it was BS, I'm grateful that I went through it, because now we have more wisdom through it, and are always gonna advocate for other people to always be watchful and always make sure they have a strong belief system as well.
Because if you don't stand for anything, you fall for it.
Yeah, and we fell hard.
Harder than hard. And I'm just grateful that we can even be at a place that we can talk about it and laugh about it, because this was never... I never saw this day coming where I would be able to talk about it and laugh about it.
Because we lost a lot, like
financially, mentally, spiritually, just
physically, all of that.
Everything. Like, I would not wish this experience on my worst enemy. That's how bad it was. I can help prevent somebody from going through this. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. So we just are super grateful to be in this place to just share our testimony.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate anyone that comes across this, and we want to be as authentic and real as possible. So just a place to release and just process things. So we'll see you guys in the next one.